Well, chapter 15 is a record of God's warnings to Samson. This is a chapter of seeming victories, but it ends with the strong man utterly exhausted. And if you have time to read this chapter, you can read about it, that God supernaturally works through him, but yet at the end of the chapter, he's reduced to a man dying of thirst. And again, God rescues him. And the whole 15th chapter is him ignoring God's warnings. And that's what leads to his downfall. But the tragedy of Samson's life is the 16th chapter, because he's playing with sin. Samson already had gotten into trouble with one woman. Now he tries again. This time he goes deep into enemy territory. Pride has taken hold of him. He is the Superman, and so he can go marching right into the epicenter of the Philistine army and of the Philistine settlement, going for another woman. And his lusts take him into the city of Gaza. Again, God warns him. The enemies almost catch him. But Samson refuses to repent. And then Delilah comes into his life. And there in the valley of Sorek, he is near to his house he grew up in, but his heart is far from the God he should know and love and serve. You know, it's amazing to see this Nazirite separated one in chapter 16 asleep on the lap of a wicked woman. But that's what happened whenever we choose to go our own way, to play with sin, and to reject the counsel of the loved ones that God has put into our lives. Well, Samson played with sin. What was his problem? Number one, he was dominated by lust. The passion that led Samson to desire a Philistine woman as a wife, which was strictly forbidden by God, was lust. The passion that led him to liaisons with prostitutes, like the one with the woman Delilah, who betrayed him for money, can only be called lust. How many times do men say, no, I'm doing that because I love her? No, love can wait. Lust never can wait. Love can wait. Lust can't. You want to know the difference between love and lust? Can you wait? If you can't, it's lust. Love always waits. He was dominated by lust. Secondly, he was driven by pride and revenge. Samson's life is characterized by pride and revenge. He was more moved by anger at the personal affronts of people that had embarrassed him or harmed him or took something of his. And he struck out at the Philistines in that anger and revenge mode, rather than being moved by the suffering of his people, that he was supposed to be their leader. But the last facet of his playing with sin, not only was he dominated by his own lust that he had fed all of his life and grown in, and driven by his pride, but actually he was defeated by himself. It's amazing what Samson, with his great strength and godly heritage, might have been if he had only lived out daily his commitment to God expressed in his Nazirite vow. But he didn't. Well, he lost. What exactly did Samson lose? The scriptures don't have 5 or 6. They have 7 things. It's interesting. He lost his hair. Do you remember? As he was sleeping, the symbol of his Nazirite dedication. For that dedication had long been abandoned, but God allowed the outward symbol of it to be taken away from him. It says that he loses his strength. Look at verse 20. I think this is one of the most tragic verses of this whole account. It says in verse 20, "And she said, 'The Philistines are upon you, Samson.'" This is Delilah speaking. "So he awoke from his sleep and said, 'I will go out as before, as at other times, and I will shake myself free.'" But look at this. I love the King James. "He wist not that the Spirit had departed, the strength of the Lord had left him." He did not know that the Lord had departed from him. He did not know how futile it is for the servant of God to try and serve the Lord when he's out of God's will, because we lose our strength. Be not deceived. God's not mocked. We operate in our own strength. He'll let us fail in our own strength. We operate trying to live without heeding His warnings. He'll let us live without heeding His warnings. We operate without walking in the Spirit. He'll let us operate without walking in the Spirit. Tragic. He lost his strength. Thirdly, he loses his sight. The Philistines put out his eyes. He loses his freedom. They bind him with fetters of brass. He loses his usefulness for the Lord. He ends up grinding corn instead of fighting God's battles. And that is always the picture of sin. As I said before, first sin will blind us, then it will bind us, and then we grind for sin. And any person who's ever lived a life of alcohol or immorality or drugs will tell you, no matter how alluring it looks, it's always, in the end, gravel, as the writer of Proverbs says, in the mouth. It all began, though, when Samson despised the way God raised him and defied his parents. Well, he loses his testimony next. He was the laughingstock of the Philistines. Their fish god Dagon, not the God of Israel, was given the glory that day. And finally, he loses his life. Samson was a castaway.